Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathashala. I am Professor K. Srinivas from Pondicherry University. I teach philosophy at that university. I am also the course coordinator for Indian Religion and Philosophy for the subject Indian Culture. And in this module, I would like to concentrate on the religious and philosophical import of the Vedas, with an intention to cover the following objectives. What is Veda? Why is Veda called Shruti? What is the structure of Vedas? Religious and philosophical elements in Veda. At the end of the module, I am sure that you are going to learn about these objectives. Let me now start with the following module: the religious and philosophical import of the Vedas. The Sanskrit root of the Veda is Vid, means knowledge. Of course, it is also interpreted as wisdom in some of the textbooks. They are the earliest scriptural texts, I mean the Vedas, handed down to the generations of humankind, containing the divine truths. The Vedas are said to be apocryphal, apaurusheya, for no human agency is involved in their origin. Some even say that the Vedas have divine origin, but by and large, the Indian philosophers claim that the philosophy of Vedas is apaurusheya, and there is no human agency involved in producing these Vedas. The Vedas are also known as Shruti, literally meaning hearing, for they belong to oral tradition. Normally we say that they belong to the oral tradition because Vedas were never written, they were only orally transmitted to the disciples by the gurus to the, or rather it is the Vedic knowledge is conveyed to eligible disciples, not to everyone, to eligible disciples. That's why they maintained this oral tradition throughout. There were no written compilations in the beginning, but there arose a need to compile them in a written form. This task was undertaken by the sage named Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. He codified the single Vedic compendium into the following Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. It is clearly mentioned in the beginning there was only one single Veda, because there was a need for some kind of classification of the Veda into four important parts. That was the reason why Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, who is also popularly called Veda Vyasa, codified these Vedas into Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. In the memory of this great sage, the Hindus celebrate Guru Purnima on his birthday. Well, this is very important because people normally think that Veda Vyasa is the author of the Vedas. Strictly speaking, the Vedas do not have any author. The orally transmitted Vedic literature has been recorded by Vedavyasa And this literature has been classified into Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva. Again, each Veda is divided into two parts, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. The former deals with the Samhitas. The Samhitas are nothing but the collections of mantras, and the Brahmanas, and the later with the Aranyakas and the Upanishads. And the Brahmanas deal with the ritual aspects, and Aranyakas are technically called forest treatises, and Upanishads are known as the end portions of the Vedas. They contain the philosophical wisdom. In other words, this classification is needed to show the distinction between action and knowledge. For example, Samhitas and Brahmanas belong to the action portion. They are mainly used by the priests for ritual practices. On the other hand, Aranyakas and the Upanishads, they are used for the philosophical wisdom by the great sages. Those who are interested in material gains follow the former portion, and those who are interested in acquiring knowledge follow the later. The mantras are hymns addressed to eulogized gods and goddesses for some material favor. The collection of such mantras is called Samhita. There are 4 Samhitas: Rig Samhita, Yajur Samhita, Sama Samhita and Atharva Samhita. These Samhitas are compiled for the smooth and unhindered performance of the Vedic rituals or sacrifices, which are also known as yajnas. But yajna always means a sacrificial celebration. So it is also held in traditional Hindu texts that Rig means verse. That's why the entire Rig Veda is written in ancient Sanskrit poetry. Sama means songs, and Yajuh means prose passage. Thus, Samhita or mantra portion of the Veda consists of hymnology addressed to the various gods and goddesses. Rig Samhita is the oldest and the most important of all the Samhitas. The Vedic rishis are not the authors of the Vedas, but only the sayers of the mantras. The Brahmanas, unlike mantras, are in prose. The Brahmanas elaborate the complicated ritualism of the Vedas by emphasizing on the rules and regulations laid down for the performance of yajna. Normally, we perform yajnas for different occasions. For each occasion, a particular type of yajna is performed, and the rules prescribed for each yajna are different. Therefore, the Brahmanas help us what kind of rules should be followed to perform a particular type of an yajna. The expression Brahmana is originally derived from the word Brahman, which means a prayer. There is very little philosophy in this portion, strictly speaking. The appendages to these Brahmanas are called Aranyakas. They are called so because they are composed in the forest amidst calmness. These texts are mark of transition from ritualistic portion of the Vedas to their knowledge portion, which is also called philosophical portion. Here in this portion, we find mystic interpretation of the Vedic sacrifices. The concluding portions of the Vedas is called Upanishads. They are highly philosophical in their purport and regarded as the cream of the Vedic philosophy. This is the reason why Upanishads are called Vedanta. There is a gradual development of philosophical thought from the mantras to the Brahmanas, to the Aryanyakas to the Upanishads. There is a natural transition from naturalistic and anthropomorphic polytheism through transcendent monotheism to immanent monism in the pre-Upanishadic thought. Normally we say that in the beginning of the Vedas were more inclined towards nature and anthropocentric polytheism. As you are aware of the fact that polytheism involves many gods. And in the Vedic literature, we come across the gods of nature and also gods who are of human form. From this state, gradually there is a transition to monotheism. We call this transcendent monotheism and also immanent monism. What is this transcendent monotheism? We believe that there is one single God in the form of supreme reality. So this God may be equated with Lord Shiva or with Lord Vishnu, but gradually there is a transition from this monotheism to monism too. Perhaps in the Upanishads we come across the supreme reality in the form of immanent monism. This supreme reality is known as Brahman. Brahman is the only reality according to the Upanishads. The personified natural forces changed into real gods and later on became mere prompts of one personal and transcendental God, who is the custodian of cosmic and moral order. Strictly speaking, in the Vedas, this particular cosmic and moral order is referred to as Rita. The Western interpretation of the Vedas does not go well with the spirit of the Vedas. For my part, I feel that most of the Western interpretations, excepting very few, could not really gauge the depth of the Vedas. That is the reason why often we see a lot of misconceptions about the Vedic literature explained in the Western philosophical texts. According to such interpretations, the Vedic seers were inspired by the primitive natural forces, but it is the other way around. The Vedas are authorless and eternal. The Vedic seers, with their intellect and spiritual powers, came face to face with reality, and this mystic experience or a direct intuitive spiritual insight overflew in the nature of the Vedic hymns. Actually, it is also believed that the Vedas represent the mystic experiences of the great sages and their seers. Now, whatever is experienced by these great sages and seers is transmitted to their deserving disciples. Therefore, the content of Veda, strictly speaking, contains such rich mystic experiences of these great seers and sages. That is the reason why we call the Vedic knowledge the knowledge or wisdom. The important feature of the Vedic hymns is the same spiritual monism. the same immanent conception of identity in difference, that which ultimately transcends itself. If there were polytheism in the Vedas, how is it that the binding principle of this world, the supreme self of the universe, namely the Atman or the Brahman, the guardian of the cosmos, is always referred to? Even when polytheism paves the way for monotheism, the most powerful god among the hierarchy of gods is posited as the ruler of this universe. All the gods are the manifestation of the same supreme god or principle. For example, there are Vedic interpretations by the Vedantins like Shankara. According to Shankara, the ultimate principle is known as Brahman, and this Brahman can never be equated with any god or goddess. So therefore, the supreme principle can never be reduced to the status of a god according to the purport of the Veda. When gods are praised, in fact, it is the supreme God who is praised through his manifestations. However, one can only see monism through the Vedas. Behind all these polytheistic interpretations, there is only one supreme God, and that supreme God manifests in ever so many ways. Some of the descriptions reveal the true nature of the real. For example, in the Rig Veda, it is mentioned the one real, the wise, so the one is real, the wise declare it as many. Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. The real is one, but it is called or addressed by many names. Ultimately, all these names refer to one single principle according to the Vedic seers. Although one cannot really distinguish between religion and philosophy in the Rig Veda, the kind of questions that one confronts give an impression that both religious and philosophical concerns are embedded in the structuring of the Vedas. Because in the Indian context, strictly speaking, religion and philosophy cannot be separated from each other. The same goes well with the Vedas too. Perhaps it is not right on our part to distinguish the religion and philosophy in the Vedas, although for the sake of convenience or brevity, we would like to say that there are certain portions in the Vedas which deal with the religious aspects, certain other portions in the Vedas, they deal with the philosophical wisdom. But strictly speaking, we should not separate religion from philosophy. The following questions substantiate our view. For example, what makes the wind blow? Why does the monsoon come? What put the sun, giver of warmth and light, in the heavens? How is it that broad-bosomed earth brings forth these myriad life forms? These are some of the most interesting questions that we confront in the Vedic literature. The personification of natural forces, for example, gods, to a great extent answers the questions without entering into the world of mystery. Because the early Vedic literature clearly shows the Vedic gods are nothing but the natural forces. That's the reason Perhaps some of the interpreters would say there is naturalism embedded in Vedic culture. The god of fire, for instance, Agni, has certain natural powers. Similar is the case with the god of wind, Vayu. Thus, gods as natural forces are responsible for any natural activity. Thus, vital questions of how and why are answered in terms of who. That means who is responsible for a particular type of action, a natural action I mean. Then the people sought to control nature by offering prayers, sacrifices, and rituals for their own benefit. It is not a wonder why one finds so many hymns in the Vedas to eulogize gods and goddesses. For instance, if we suffer from lack of rain, then there are certain hymns addressed to the Vedic god Varuna, who is responsible for rains. So, in praise of this Vedic god, there are certain hymns. We use those hymns to eulogize that particular god so that we can have good rains. Similarly, religion came into the picture only when rituals and sacrifices are performed by humans in order to eulogize the gods for their mundane favors. But the questions how the gods control nature and how the humans could influence the gods resulted in a serious theology or theological interpretation. But majority of these explanations are from the Brahmana portions of the Veda, which highlight the details of religious worship. Later on in the Aranyakas, we find a shift from ritualism to free intellectual inquiry into the nature of reality. And the Aranyakas belong to Jnanakanda or knowledge portion. Although the Aranyakas do not oppose the religious way, they brought in meditation in the place of sacrifice. For example, the ritual portion has come to an end when Aranyakas took over. Now, the meditation gradually led to free speculation and contemplation that permeated the Upanishads. One should remember that it is not all that easy to distinguish religion and philosophy in the Vedas. I have already explained this part because, strictly speaking, a religion in Indian context is not the kind of religion which is often explained by the Westerners. In the Indian context, a religion is seen as a way of life. So, this way of life need not focus on any particular god or goddess. The kind of religion that is seen in the Vedic literature does not focus on any particular god or goddess. So this is the fundamental difference between the Indian conception of religion and the Western conception of religion. Therefore, strictly speaking, we do not make any distinction between religion and philosophy because both are interdependent. Since now Coming to the natural forces, these natural forces are treated as gods. The view that Vedic people were polytheistic gained popularity. Now, there is in fact neither polytheism nor monotheism, rather it is a simple stage of belief. Because belief in so many gods or belief in one particular god gradually eroded when Aranyakas and Upanishads came into the picture. Unlike in the polytheistic faith, the Vedic gods do not preserve their proper places. They do shrink into insignificance or shine as supreme. On a definite occasion, a particular god is eulogized as supreme in order to satisfy one's need or needs. Now, such kind of importance given to a particular god on a particular occasion is called by Max Muller the henotheism. Strictly speaking, there is neither polytheism nor monotheism, but there is a henotheism according to Max Muller. According to this view, every god or every goddess has his or her own importance in the life of every individual. Therefore, depending upon one's need, a particular god or goddess is worshipped in order to satisfy one's own desires or wants. Typically, this is the view you find in the Vedas. Now, coming to 6 very important Vedic gods, they are Varuna, Indra, Agni, Soma, Rudra, and Vishnu. We find a lot of references to these Vedic gods in the Vedic literature. Perhaps there may be many more, but these are the gods who are very prominent in Indian literature. Therefore, we are going to highlight the significance of these 6 gods for the practitioners of the Vedas. For example, the latter 2 are important because they are developed into full-fledged gods by their respective sects as supreme beings. For example, Rudra is also known as Shiva, and today we have Saivism, for which Rudra becomes the center of that particular sect. Similarly, Vishnu is very important for Vaishnavites. Now, these 2 gods have become supreme gods to these 2 sects, namely Saivism and Vaishnavism. But all other gods like Varuna, Indra, Agni, and Soma are given equal importance by both Shaivites and also by Vaishnavites. For instance, Varuna was regarded as the highest ethical creation as well as the great celestial Brahmana by the Vedic Hindus. Indra was worshipped as the god of victory, being a warrior king, and was invoked very frequently as a god of storm. Similarly, Agni and Soma are also given importance as terrestrial gods, representing fire and plant respectively. Invariably, both these gods were invoked during the rituals. Whether the rituals performed by the Saivites or the rituals performed by the Vaishnavites, these gods are given importance. The divine and human worlds coalesce in Agni as the fire consumes the sacrifice and as the priest he presents it to the gods above. In a way, he is the mediator between the gods and human beings. Not only a priest who brings gods and human beings together, but also the element who binds the three worlds. So that is the significance of Agni in the Vedic literature. Now, coming to Varuna, he is the universal monarch, whereas Indra is the monarch of his own making. Varuna abides by the law and truth as the guardian. In other words, Varuna is the guardian of Rita, or the cosmic order. This cosmic order is also called moral order, which is natural part of this universe. And it is the Varuna who controls this Rita. He possesses uncanny power, the Maya, or the potency. This is the reason why people must approach him with utmost fear and extreme circumspection. Indra is another Vedic god who inspires terror. He kills and makes people alive. He wounds and he heals them. So this is the characteristic of Indra according to the Vedas. In the Vedas, it is also held that Rudra was not associated with other Vedic gods, excepting with Maruts. And these Maruts are also known as Rudras because they are his sons. He is not only the destroyer, but also a great physician with 1,000 remedies at his disposal. In the Rig Veda, it is mentioned that his hand is soothing and healing and cool. His hand takes away all the ailments sent by other gods. Further, the Rudra is developed as Rudra Siva in the latter versions of the Veda. Now, in the contemporary scenario, some say Rudra is the another name of Lord Shiva. Coming to Vishnu, Vishnu, like Shiva, is a great god of classical Hinduism. Shiva appeared in the form of the Vedic Rudra, but out of 1017 hymns found in the Rig Veda, only 6 hymns are addressed to Lord Vishnu. This is something very peculiar. And 3 of them he shares with God Indra. From these hymns, we come to know that he measures the earth, the sky, and the beyond. Mortals can only traverse the first 2, and Vishnu alone knows the third and the highest. Thus he sets limits to the finite world. Now, coming to the concluding aspect of this particular module, I would like to state philosophy and religion are promiscuously mixed up in the Vedas. It's very difficult to separate one from the other because both contain eternal truths. They are also known as Shruti, the Vedas, because they contain wisdom, which is orally transmitted to the deserving disciples. Suppose Vedas are available in written form. Anybody can have access to this Vedic literature, but the great Vedic rishis deliberately did not put Vedic teachings in written form, for they wanted these Vedic teachings are orally transmitted to deserving disciples, but not to everyone. This is the secret behind the Vedic knowledge. So the Vedic gods were the personification of natural forces. The entire universe was controlled by the moral order called Rita. The Vedic gods like Indra, Varuna, Agni, Rudra, Vishnu were worshipped by the ancient Hindus in nature. So we find, strictly speaking, no separation between religion and philosophy in the Vedas. Friends, I hope you could really grasp from this lesson what is Veda. Veda deals with wisdom, or it contains wisdom. And the highest kind of knowledge is technically called wisdom. Now I said, why are they called Shruti? Because Vedas belong to oral tradition. There were no written documents concerning Vedic literature. What is found today in the form of written documents was much later development. But initially the great Vedic sages and seers never wanted Vedic literature to be in the written form, so that the Vedas are not accessible to undeserving people. From this lesson, you know why Vedas are called Shruti, because they belong to the oral tradition. The ancient sages and seers never wanted the Vedic knowledge to be put in any written form, for it should not be accessible to undeserving people. That was the purpose behind the whole tradition. Now coming to the structure of the Vedas, as I made it very clear, every Veda is classified into Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. And Karma Kanda deals with the ritual portion, and Jnana Kanda deals with philosophical wisdom or knowledge. So both are equally important for every individual, because every individual is composed of action and spirit. And therefore, the portion that is needed for an individual, perhaps an individual takes that portion into consideration to guide his own life's action. Now, at the end, I also told you, strictly speaking, we will not be able to distinguish religious and philosophical components in the Veda, although we claim there are certain portions in the Veda which deal with religion, certain portions in the Veda which deal with the philosophical wisdom. But in Indian context, religion and philosophy cannot be segregated from each other. Thank you. For further references, you go through the text carefully so that you will know more about the Vedas. Thank you.